We have a lot of exciting live streaming content for you today. Coming up next is Debbie Youngleman, who will be demonstrating weaving. We've got a couple of things to set up and then she'll be ready. All of the content that was streamed this weekend will be or has been recorded and will be linked up at our website, www.hmwg.org/show. So you will be able to enjoy that in the future if there's anything that you missed. Debbie, are you?
I'm about ready. I'm trying to set up my, I think we're going to go one camera again today.
Okay, not a problem.
All right, let me just,
And I do want to encourage people to submit questions and comments. You can do that in one of two ways. If you're watching on YouTube, you can submit a comment right in the live chat. I have access to those and we'll be able to read them out. You can also submit a comment or a question on our website, www.hmwg.org/show. There is a button that says live stream comments. Go ahead and click that. Very simple form to submit your comment. And I have access to both of those.
all right. Where was I? Okay, perfect. Good. You can see
Debbie,
me?
for anyone who was not here yesterday, could you introduce yourself and tell us about your project?
Sure. My name is Debbie Youngleman. Describe myself as a hobby weaver. I am working on a project of small fingertip towels to be used in my own guest bathroom when I have company, instead of putting out paper towels. All right. Okay, sorry, I had to get rid of the distracting light there. But it's the project I'm doing is all in cotton. It's something called unmercerized cotton. It seems to dry better. And right now I'm just trying to get out a tangle from a wrong throw of the shuttle. So bear with me 1 second. Oh, there's one other way around this, which may be faster. All right, sorry about that, everyone. So I'm working on a 4-shaft loom. It has, right about the castle. It has 4 separate shafts that come up and determine the pattern based on how these long or warp threads were threaded through these different metal heddles, which are sort of long, skinny bars that have eyes in the middle of them. All right, ready to go, I think. When you start weaving each day, it's that first few throws of the shuttle are always a little tenuous. And then every weaver usually gets some kind of a rhythm. Hmm. So I'm stopping because I'm pretty sure I have a mistake that I'm going to undo a little of. It's only 4 rows. And I just weave backwards the way I had gone before. All right. Can anyone out there see my ruler? Got it. You weren't going to see it. It was hidden.
So Debbie, I wonder if you might tell us how you got started in weaving.
I will. So I went to learn how to weave in 2005. I had a single project in mind. I was going to knit my daughter's tallis for her bat mitzvah. And so because of that, turn the light down one. Okay. And so that was my first project. In fact, actually, I was probably weaving for about 4 years before I even joined the guild. But that was my goal, and I met it. I had 2 years to learn how to do it, and then I did it. And then since then, I weave to make gifts. I weave a little bit of stuff just to sell at when the guild has their show and sale. It's relaxing, something to do. All right.
And I know that you combine your vacation with workshops. Is that right? Can you tell us about some of the workshops and trips you've taken?
I have. So we took one vacation to a place called the John Campbell Folk School, which is in, the very southwest corner of North Carolina. And it's just like summer camp for adults. I went and I learned how to do a specific technique of painting on the warp while we weave. And my husband, who does woodworking, also went and spent the week learning how to turn miniature wooden bowls. But it was very nice. Yesterday, we talked about how weaving is kind of a solo experience, except for workshops. When you go to a workshop, you get to meet all sorts of different people and kind of learn their little tricks of their trade for what they do. But it was a great experience. And I would go back. All right, I'm obviously not paying attention to what I'm doing. Need help. You know what? We talked about this yesterday. When I read for myself, I would like for it to be perfect. Sometimes I can't figure out what I was doing, so I'm less concerned. Although I like what just happened. Give me a minute.
You might want to point the camera down a little.
What?
You might want to point the camera down a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. You know what? I'm also thinking that I can re-log in with the phone, and actually I can show exactly what's going on here better. I don't need the microphone. Need video. I don't want audio. And nope, hang on. Let me just mute myself over here.
I think I've managed to mute both of your devices, which was probably not the goal. Sorry about that. So pick the one that you want to speak on and unmute on that one. We can see the close-up of your towel.
All right, that's what I was going for.
Okay, and I think you're going to have to unmute on your tablet.
Here, but you know,
We are getting a lot of echo.
nope, it's okay. I'm gonna turn the phone off. Because for
Okay,
some
I
reason,
think that's-
even though I muted that, it doesn't mute.
We're good now.
Yeah, I think so. I also had better light yesterday. Okay, that's good. Oh. So I have two different controls I use to move head as I go. One is the front beam, for which my finished weaving product is wound onto. And then there's the back beam where the warp threads, these are coming off of. But there's a brake system that actually lets me loosen it, but also it manages the, or relieves the tension to move the crank to get it set just the way I want it to be. Oh.
Debbie, we have a few questions from the live stream. The first one is, what is the pattern?
So this is a modified M&W pattern. So if you look at, this was the draft I started with, but I've altered it a little bit, but you can see W's and M's. And each one of these black squares here corresponds to one of the shafts here. And so they're threaded to look like this, although I made my light pat portion much wider. And so it's kind of W and then a little dip and then the other W again. I didn't do the complete M in the middle of each one. And then while I'm weaving, I'm currently now just going back and forth, straight back and forth. Yesterday, otherwise I could do, on the left, I could decide I'm going to hit the petals as V's. I could do one V in this direction and the other V starting in the other direction. But I could also follow this same M&W pattern along for how the weft goes. And when that happens, sometimes you can actually more clearly see the M and the W when you look at the fabric afterward. And I could, since I've made several variations, I can actually do that and show you. Let me just figure out where I was. So let me see if I can get in close enough to see this. Can you see it? Nope. No. There. Okay. So here I've changed, and this I did an M from one side, And then I did a W, so to say, from the other side, and it changes the pattern. You can see the little M right here. Hang on. You can see here's the M. You can see the M here along the side here. And of course, if you look at the other way, it's the W, whatever you choose to do.
Excellent. Our next question is, so you're using a floating selvage. Can you talk about that?
So there's one thread on each side. They raise up. And each time I throw the shuttle, when I go right to left, I go under these two threads. Let me see something. Let me just figure out where I last was for. Okay. So anytime I step on the treadle, the pedals on the bottom that raise the shafts, it brings up whichever threads go through those heddles, the little metal keys. But the floating selvage doesn't go through a heddle. But what I do but it always stays at the end. And what I do very carefully is when I throw from right to left, I always go under my floating selvages. And when I come from left to right, I always go over them. And that means that I'm always, with every throw of the shuttle, I am going around a thread, the very end thread of my warp. And it keeps the edges much more even. And I didn't believe in it for a long time. And then once I started doing it, I couldn't stop doing it. It seemed like the right thing to do.
So the follow-up question is, you don't seem to be concerned about the selvage pulling in as you beat.
The selvage always pulls in. There's a natural draw. This measures, we did this yesterday, this measures about 10.5 inches here. When it's off tension, it's probably a little bit more, but I started out with about 12 inches in my reed. And so there's a little bit of natural draw in, but I'm using what's called an end feed shuttle. And it has its own tensioning device in it. And so every time I throw it, it has the same amount of tension. I don't have to do anything else. It just keeps it. And so it seems to evenly pull in at each end. All right, move forward a second. So because these are fingertip towels, they're being woven about 20 inches long each. And hopefully the finished towel with the hem will be about 17, 18 inches. All right, where was I? Nope. Nope. All right, who remembers where I was?
Debbie, I'm going to encourage you next year to use a much simpler pattern for demo. I usually
No, this is very simple.
I do plain weave or a very simple twill only for demos.
Well, you know, it's interesting. So I have done a pattern like this for demo before, but one of the things I did before was, plus, like I said, since I'm making these for myself, I don't necessarily care how they come out, which sounds sad, but it's very true. Okay, that's one. So I'm actually going back this way. If that was one, this must be two. Okay, but I do always make it that I'm going right to left to an odd number treadle, and left to right for the even one. Plus, this is great. These towels have all kinds of variations in them.
Think of it as a sampler.
What? It's a sampler towel. Yeah. So a real sampler would have been if I had actually threaded the warp different in each one of these, in each one of my wide stripes.
Debbie, we have a viewer question.
Okay.
So you're showing us the weaving, but when you finish this today, you won't be done. So what are the steps that happen after you take this off the loom?
So after this comes off the loom, the first thing I do is I look at it very, very carefully and look for any mistakes in my weaving. And then I will hand fix those by taking a second small piece of the weft and reweaving it the way it should be and cutting out the mistake. Then these will get washed in warm water. And following that, I will hem them. And then and usually before I hem them and then after they're all hemmed, I will press them very hard to sort of max it to really kind of, I don't know, they look nice when they're pressed, not when but just sort of flatten them out, see if they really look like. Once in a while I'm doing that, I pick up another weaving mistake. So I go back and I fix that. And then they're good to use. But the washed product often looks a little bit different than what it looks like on the loom. It's especially true for fibers such as wools, maybe not as true for cottons, but wools can really change a lot when you wet fix them.
We have some viewer questions. The first one is, what are the dimensions of the towel?
So this towel is coming out to be about 10.5 inches across. And when they're done, they're going to be about, I think, 18 inches long. And they're just little guest towels. If I was making dish towels, they would start out closer to 20 inches or so across. And then I would weave them for a length of 32, which probably gives about a 28-inch towel.
The next question is about warping. So there are different ways to warp a loom. Can you talk about the different ways and how you warp that loom?
So this is, this loom actually, let me back up the camera a little, and you may be able to see. So actually I have to do this. Hang on, sorry about that. So, so this loom, if you notice, there's a back beam here. Well, the back here and the front here. I can actually pull these together and make my loom upright. So it's very compact. Once I do that, what happens is I warp from front to back. So I always put everything onto the back beam over here. I wind it all on, and then I sit in front of my loom and I bring each thread through whichever petal I want on whatever shaft I want. There are other people who will sit in front of their loom, and they'll sit behind their loom. They'll have their warp hanging off the front end over here, and it's a long collection of threads. And they'll sit behind their loom, and they'll actually put each thread through the heddle first, and then they will wind it onto the back beam. I did that once or twice. I'm not in love with that idea, but I did recently learn that I could take off this piece, and when my loom is folded up, it's my shafts of my heddles are right here. They're at perfect eye level for me. Most weavers also will weave on a bench or something that's adjustable. And so I weave on an adjustable bench that I can raise or lower the height of, depending upon whether I'm winding on, although I'm usually standing when I wind on, whether I'm loading the heddles, whether I'm bringing the threads through the reed, which is what determines the width of the project. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. I would add that I think it's nice to have different ways to warp a loom in your repertoire, because
Yes.
depending on the loom, depending on the project, the yarn type, a different, a particular method may be better suited.
So I had never thought about winding on front to back, except I took a workshop on working with chenille, and that's how the instructor taught us to do it. So we did that, but after that, I don't think I've ever really done that once or twice more. Oh, the other thing that happens is if you go from front to back, you actually also put it through the reed first, then through the heddles, and then tie it on in the back, and then wind on. I don't know.
Our next question.
When I started this project, after I went through the heddles and I came through the reed the first time, I actually found that I had spaced the maroon, which is a slightly thicker cotton, too far apart. And so I sort of had to take everything out of the reed and bring it back through, which I think would have been more difficult if I did it the other way. I don't know, maybe not, would have been the same.
We have another question, which is, are you walking the treadles or did you memorize the pattern? And maybe explain what walking the treadles means.
So walking the treadles is how you use your feet. So I am actually, so I'm using I have 6 treadles in this loom, and I'm using the middle 4, except when I do the end of the towel. And I don't, here, you can see them. And so when I weave this pattern, currently I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back. But actually it's 2, 3, 4, 5, then I do 4, 3, 2. But some people who do that will actually do it so they alternate feet. They think it's faster. So they would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. They would just keep going like that. But one of the things I did learn when I'm trying to weave and talk and show people stuff is that if I do that, I really get more lost than I've been getting today. So just sort of keeping it straight. But the other thing is if you're doing a pattern, and let me get an example. Hang on. So weavers use all kinds of pattern books, and they show us how to thread, but they also show us what treadles we want to use and what shafts we want to connect to the treadles. But let me find here. So this one will probably show better, but you can see how this is how the warps went. The warp went through the heddles and what shaft. But on the side here, it tells me which way to move my feet to get this pattern or down here. And I find it if I'm doing one of these M's or W's or slashes that sometimes it's easier to just stay in order than go back and forth. But certainly if you were only using 2 treadles, back and forth, 1 foot and then the other is very, very simple.
Joan would like to say that she needs one of those shuttles. I think you're converting a lot of people to Enfeed.
It is. So I started using an Enfeed shuttle when I went to craft camp. I bought the big one. So it's twice as long. It's a little heavier, but I just recently got this shorter one, and it holds an 8-inch pern. This one holds a longer one, but it's very nice. I really like it. But you can see I think very little about my selvages. Although if I was using chenille, I wouldn't use this shuttle. All right. So this is going to be the end of this towel. None of you saw that.
Weaving is kind of like cooking, right? Julia Child said, no one's in the kitchen with you and knows when you drop the turkey. So just keep on keeping on.
Wait a second. Doesn't it get a little dented looking?
You just brush it off.
I guess so. So this is the other kind of shuttle. This is a boat shuttle. And whereas my end feed shuttle kind of controls the tension, I have to use my hand to control it, to sort of stop this from going, which makes me look a little klutzy sometimes. Okay.
So we have another question, which is, we see you measuring and placing a pin. Can you talk about ways to measure items as you're making them? So measuring, using a paper tape that you use for each item to make sure it's consistent. What are the options?
So I measure and pin. I had actually thought yesterday when I had time that maybe I should just measure out a string and attach it to a pin that's 20 inches long, the thread, and then I would just put it at the start of the towel, and then I would kind of just keep holding it up to know when I got to the end. I don't know. Those are the only two ways I know to measure. Megan, how do you measure?
I'm pretty boring. I just measure it with a measuring tape and place a pin.
Yeah. But some people actually do. They have like, they'll have had a thread that's, okay, this is my 20-inch thread. You start at the beginning and then you just keep laying it as you go. And once you get to the end, you know you've gone far enough. I've
heard of people using grosgrain ribbon, like pre-marked. You know, if they have all the placemats need to be the same length, that doesn't stretch.
Right, and that's probably more accurate. For me though, sometimes like for placemats, it's the number of patterns that I've done, and that's how I know when to stop my placemat. So if it's a repeat, and I'll do 5 repeats, and that's my placemat. So it may be off by a ½ inch or so, but that's sort of one of the ways to know to go. So I'm just going to put some threads in to separate the towel I'm working on from the next towel. And I tend to always use 3 threads. So after I've checked my weaving, I have to probably, I forgot to talk about this before. After I've checked the weaving and I'm ready to go, then I actually zigzag over the very end. And what I do when I do that is I'll just I'll pull out the thread that's closest. And once I've taken that out, it gives me enough room that I can zigzag to finish off this end. And then I'll do the same thing before I start the next towel. And I just may have advanced a little bit too much. Okay. So new towel, new color. So sometimes when I'm weaving, as opposed to remembering I remember how many throws there are to each segment of a pattern. And I count that to remember to figure out where I am. It's not perfect, but it does work some days.
Pat would like you to know that she really loves that color.
What? Oh, yeah. Red.
I preferred the green. I thought it was a nice contrast to the warp stripes.
Yeah. So yeah. And you know what? I wanted to do more maroon, but I am I think I'm out of that. Which makes me wonder when I ordered stuff from Webs yesterday, why I didn't order that. Like, so usually whenever I weave towels, pretty much I never make two the same. They're always, I may be on one long warp, and while the warp is all the same, and it may just be a solid color, every towel has almost a different color weft, and I pretty much almost change the treadling pattern for every towel as I go along. Not how my tie up is how the treadles join the shafts, but just what I do with my feet. Oh, right. This was blurry. Yep. Something feels funny with my warp. I can't figure it out. Something just feels funny. Don't know.
We have a question about your yarn choices. So do you normally use 8-2 cotton for towels? And you mentioned the maroon was thicker.
So I use 8-2 or 6-2 for the towels, but in this particular towel, I had some leftover 5-2 mercerized cotton that I wanted to finish off. And so originally my plan had been to make all the stripes out of that, but I only had enough for 4 stripes. So then I said, but I have this other maroon, but it's 6-2. I'll just put 2 stripes of that in. And yeah, the mercerized cottons, the unmercerized cotton is, it doesn't have as much sheen, but it probably dries a little better. Has more absorbency, although over time the mercerized cotton, which is has more sheen, will actually become more absorbent after a bunch of washings. But yeah, I like the 8-2. A lot of people like to use mixed fibers cotton, which is part cotton, part linen. That also dries very nicely. It's very nice to work with. This just kind of became my thing. And for a long time, I almost did only towels that had black backgrounds, black warps, which is only hard on your eyes when you're sewing them at the very end.
Well, Debbie, we're at 4 o'clock. I want to thank you for demonstrating today. That was really wonderful.